the civilian population is not like the military. The culture is radically different. It's much more cutthroat. The civilian industry believe that if they can leave you destitute and take all your stuff in a business deal, that they are, quote unquote, more sophisticated than you. And once you get it, understand the playing field that you're on, then approach it with the right safeguards and precautions, and do the vetting of the people that you're going to interact with, and then you can be okay. You can make your mark, you can do well, and you can treat each other with dignity and respect, but just realize they're not your friend.
We are The David Johnson Show, bringing the veteran community stories and perspectives so you can design the life that you deserve.
Strong like a tree, there's roots where I
Welcome to The David Johnson Show out here in Phoenix, Arizona. Today we are joined by Craig Sawyer. Thanks for coming down.
Hey, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Dave.
Awesome. This is going to be a great show, and I can't wait to hear your story. And the reason why I like it is because, I mentor veterans here in Phoenix, and I constantly talk about the chapters in people's lives. And you have a lot of chapters in your book, and things have changed. Your focus has changed. The knowledge you've gained, I'm sure, in each chapter. I always say knowledge is cumulative. It builds up, and here you are today. So this is going to be an amazing talk.
Yeah. There are multiple chapters. I feel 1,000 years old. A lot of hard off-road miles. But I'm grateful for all those experiences, because I do use them for things that I think are important now. So
awesome.
Wouldn't trade it.
Let's call chapter 1 the military. I'm a veteran. This show's for veterans. We're big on that, obviously, and that's the reason why we're here. So chapter 1 is the military. How did that start for you?
It started for me when the first oil recession hit in Houston.
Interesting.
And so I had a good job there out of high school, and I originally wanted to go to University of Texas and be a linebacker there and play football, but it didn't line up that way, and ended up in a commercial air conditioning company that some of my friends worked with. And anyway, the oil recession hit, and Houston got hit very hard, and a lot of businesses went under, including this old company that we were working for. And I'd been reading about Marines and the Force Recon in Soldier of Fortune magazine, and it was talking about how well disciplined they were, how the silent professionals, and how they went into enemy territory, and just mapped out everything and called in the intel by radio, and made good things happen. And I thought, man, that sounds like that's for me.
Wow.
They're the hardest dudes, and they're not scared, and they're going right into enemy countries, And I thought that was really cool. So like the toughest spec ops unit of the toughest military branch was the Marines. I'm like, that's where I feel like I need to be, because I was a defensive captain of a 5A football team, in Southern Texas, and I grew up boxing, fighting martial arts tournaments, and
wow.
And I kind of found my space in that tough guy, persona, and that worked for me, and I enjoyed that, and I wanted to go make that contribution as a warrior. And but when I got into the Marine Corps, they let me know, well, Force Recon doesn't really exist in the sense that you think it does. Yeah, there's some guys in the unit, but it's not really funded right now. There's no mission. It's
not what it is today. The Raiders, the Marsoc Raiders, you read about it was a different world.
It wasn't what it is now back then at all. So they said there's not really any funding, and there's no political backing. So we're not running training courses and accepting members and building the unit, because there's kind of nothing for them to do. And I thought, well,
interesting.
Then what am I to do now? And they said, well, you should have gone to the SEAL team, because the Navy has the missions, the Navy has the budget, and they have the political backing. Those are the baddest dudes on earth. And I said, well, how do I get there? And they said, you can't get there from here.
Yeah. Different airport, different ticket.
Yeah, and I just thought, wow, well, watch me.
Wow.
And so I did everything it took to get all the way out of the Marine Corps and over to the Navy, and had to start over again. But I did. And then I went through boot camp and passed my Navy SEAL fitness test with 104
and let me show my ignorance,
which wasn't
here.
Fun.
Wow, 104 fever.
Yeah,
that's not fun doing anything. It's not fun to sit on the couch with 104. Could you join back then straight to the SEAL teams and BUDS?
Nope.
Or you had to?
No, I had to go to 10 months of electronics school. I went through a big tech school as a missile technician, missile tech, gunners mate missiles, and there was a bunch of electronics. You went to a separate electronics school for a while, and then back to finish your missile education. So I was doing page-long math equations as fast as I could all day, half the night, and just cramming. 10 months later, I finally got my orders to go to BUDS. But in the Navy, they assume that you're going to fail BUDS, so you need a technical rating under which you will work. In the Navy, once you fail out of BUDS, you need to be qualified to go do a job.
Right. So you have to have an MOS per se, and if you fail out, you just go back to your MOS.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so
here you are with 104 temperature.
Yeah. Well, this was in boot camp, and they said, who came specifically to be a Navy SEAL and go to BUDS?
Kidding.
And there was only like 3 of us out of the 2 or 3 boot camp classes.
Wow.
And they said, okay, you guys show back up at this time, on this day. And I was sick, because you get all these guys come together, right, from all over the country. And if one of them's sick, everybody's kind of getting sick. So
we're experiencing a little bit about that today in the current times.
Yeah. So I made it. I was in good shape. I'd been training very hard for the test, and I made it. But the thing that I was strongest at was the run, and that was the very last part of the challenge. And so we were running around a swimming pool indoors for the run at that point. This was up in the Great Lakes in Chicago. And the instructor yelled out, "You better sprint," because I was it was going to come right down to the wire. And he counted down, and I ran across with his stopwatch right at the cutoff time. And so I barely made it. And
wow.
So then they had me run that test again, I don't know, 6 or 8 months later, while I was going still through school to see how I was progressing, see if I was physically fit. And of course, then I crushed it, because I'd been swimming 2 miles a night in the pool. I'd been lifting. I'd been running.
And how old were you then?
I was up like 23.
Okay.
Yeah.
So made it through BUDS, obviously, clearly.
Yeah.
And then what's the next? I say being operational. What's the next chapter in that progression?
Well, then I had to get back past the black hats and
Airborne
binning
school,
jump school.
I'm sure that was hard for you.
Yeah, I had a mustache, and the instructors didn't like that.
Yeah,
and they didn't like SEALs to begin with, because we'd climb and hang banners from their jump towers.
I had a few SEAls in my class.
Yeah, so we'd play pranks on them and steal their stuff and humiliate them and just be pranksters.
Yeah.
Young guys straight out of BUDS. It's kind of
like a vacation for you, though. I mean.
So we were messing with them. Like, one of the things that I did, I don't think they appreciated this. There was a sawdust pit where you practiced parachute landing falls, and it's under a warehouse shed type of roof. This is half a football stadium size facility. So they have you do pull-ups before you go in there and do the training. And it's early morning, pre-dawn, and everybody's jumping up and they're doing their pull-ups, and then they're going into the pit to start training. And I jumped up, and I was kind of have a bad back, so I jumped up and I turned to stretch to pop a couple of my rib heads, and one of the instructors ran up and said, "Oh, you can't do one single pull-up," and he misunderstood what I was doing. Right, I was stretching for just a second before I banged out my pull-ups, because I could do 20 perfect dead hang pull-ups, through BUDS, and I was in that kind of shape, so I said, "No, I think I could do one," and I struggled. I went really, really slow, and then I didn't even go all the way to the top, and I just rolled my chin over the top of the bar like there, and I dropped, it went back to a dead hang like I was exhausted. And he's like, "This one can't even do one perfect pull up," and so all the instructors ran around, and then. They're like, "What's wrong with you, Navy SEAL, blah, 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 blah." They worked themselves into a frenzy. And so then I pulled myself up, and I'm like, "Let me try again." I did one. I struggled. And I got my chin over the bar, and I dropped down and did another one a little bit faster. And then I just started banging them out as fast as I could. I said, "Hey, this isn't so bad once you get warmed up." They're like, "Get off my bar."
That's funny.
So when we mess with them like that, they don't like that kind of thing. So. Anyway, they finally forced me to shave my mustache, because they kept failing my boot inspections and all that stuff. Even when my boots were perfect, but
right.
Those games. And then after boot camp, or after jump school, went to SEAL Team 1, and and formed up in my first platoon and checked off all my certs and qualifications and started learning and deploying with those guys. And
How do they treat you when you're the new guy that shows up and all the new guys that come up to get to the teams?
like dirt.
Yeah.
It was, you know, the thing is, the older guys with the most experience and the strongest character treated me the best. It was
Sure.
the guys with only one stripe on me with, quite frankly, drinking problems and weren't really doing well. Those are guys that treated me like dirt.
It's kind of a theme I've noticed in life and in certain aspects, not
Yeah.
just, I get
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Because they want to help out the younger guy. They have nothing to prove, so to speak. But,
Yeah,
I
it was
hear
the
what you're
senior
saying.
chief that was really outperforming everybody. And he was the one that was teaching me stuff and helping me and mentoring me. And that was inspiring and motivating.
So what year was that then when you got to SEAL? That
88.
SEAL team? 88.
Yeah.
And you bounced around from a few SEAL teams in the course of your career.
Well, on that one, I stayed at SEAL Team 1 until after Desert Storm. I'd become a sniper, and then I went to Desert Storm and got combat action there.
Wow.
And then we captured the first Iraqi prisoners of the war. And we were working from the ships and oil rigs.
Wow.
And I was the lead fast attack vehicle driver over there. That was a fantastic program. All kinds of wild, crazy stories about that.
I bet.
Crashing helicopters and almost driving those things off cliffs, and it was it was a wild ride.
A little fun, maybe. A little
And then
excitement.
came back after Desert Storm, and then screened for DevGru. Got picked up for SEAL Team 6, but it wasn't going to be for another year. So in the meanwhile, I served as a sniper instructor for the West Coast SEAL teams and helped train the young snipers. And
Wow.
then I went off to DevGru, and we don't talk about what goes on there, but it was a larger than life experience, and I spent 7 years there operating at the highest level counter-terrorist operations.
So if we had to sum up this, your military career as a chapter, were there some key experiences, key units, key people you met that would you help framed up that chapter in your life?
Yeah, there were a couple. There was a senior chief and a master chief that I found both the most motivating, and they were both at SEAL Team 1. That inspired me the most to become the best operator that I could. And they were just good at everything, fantastic at everything that there was. And I thought, man, I really want to be like those guys. And before I'd gone in to the SEAL teams, I grew up listening to stories about King David from the Bible and what a bad warrior that dude was, and what a severe killer he was, and why he fought. And that was my model. In my mind, in my heart, I wanted to be like that. And I'd been reading about the MACV-SOG operations in Vietnam and the Navy SEALs that worked specifically in the Rung Sat Special Zone, or what they called the Forest of Assassins. And I thought, man, I want to stand next to those guys. I want to fight next to them. And one day I want for them to look to their left and right, and when they see me next to them, I want them to be glad that Sawman's there, and that to be a good thing. Like, oh yeah, Sawman's got my left side. We're good tonight. That's the contribution that I wanted to bring.
Gotcha.
And so,
Wow.
that was my mindset while I was there.
And then when did you decide, I'm out? This, I did my time. I'm going to call this chapter, call it over.
When my wife said, we got a baby on board,
Yeah. Wow.
and I thought,
I'll
okay,
do it.
well, I'm gone 360 days a year. I only had about 60 days, at home.
Yeah.
And
it's tough.
so I was volunteering for special programs and so forth. So I was into it. And I thought, well, this is no way to raise kids. So I scanned the horizon for what could be next. And federal law enforcement seemed to provide an option. There was a guy from our command. He was a pilot, and he had 2 master's degrees, and he had gone to the Federal Air Marshal service. And he said, hey, Craig, this is a small unit. This is pre-9/11. And he said, small unit, but we train hard, and it's good. The morale's good, and it's a good little job, and you can support your family and be home more and still serve your country. And I thought, okay, let me go do that. So I started off doing that.
So we've had conversations on the show about that. Before you got out, were you trying to stay within, I don't want to say the same industry, but in that defense or government type work? Was that
It mattered
a
to
natural
me.
fit?
It mattered to me to serve my country. I still liked that. It felt right. That's where my heart was. And if I could do that and make a lot more money than I was on the SEAL team and be home with my family more, that made sense for the next phase of my life, which was going to be fatherhood. So I realized, okay, my young single warrior days are kind of apparently seem to be behind me now, and so I wanted to do that and still serve federally.
That's awesome. So how was it when you were there for the birth of your child? I'm a father. I have a 6-year-old. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It's
I had
life-changing.
to fly home from an operation on the SEAL team for our first daughter, and then our boy
Wow.
was born actually in Vegas, and once I was already an Air Marshal, and it was good to be home for their births. I would not have wanted to miss that, but I had missed weddings, funerals, birthdays,
Yeah.
Christmas, Thanksgiving every year for years and years and years and years, and it got to where, it was just, there was time for a new phase of my life.
And we were chatting before. You saw the Air Marshal program change from kind of pre 9/11 to after 9/11.
Oh yeah, massively.
I was not even aware until we chatted that one day there was a Air Marshal program pre 9/11. I didn't even know.
Yeah, it was small but very specialized, and so they cross-trained with other counter-terrorist units, foreign law enforcement and counter-terrorist units.
Wow.
And the morale was high, and the training was good, and we liked it then. And then after 9/11, there's no nice way to put it. Somebody hired a bunch of bureaucrats to run that agency, and it's been probably the most grossly mismanaged agency, federal agency out there. And you only have to Google the interviews and the exposure articles and so forth that have been revealed about that. But it got really bad. It's disheartening to see a good agency get ruined like that.
Wow. And that led you to more stuff working with the Department of Defense, correct? And doing other security operations after the Air Marshal program?
Well, I blew the whistle on a crook who the Air Marshal Service, the director in his infinite wisdom, while he was grossly mismanaging the Air Marshal Service, brought a guy that from the top of the FBI who had been at the FBI for the first World Trade Center bombing. I think he said he was number 2 in the FBI. I don't know if that's what his actual ranking was, but he told us he was number 2. So let's say that's accurate. He was number 2 of the FBI for the first World Trade Center bombing, Ruby Ridge, Waco, Oklahoma City, and 9/11 itself. So dude obviously had some issues there. Each one of those was a major black eye for the FBI. And so I don't know what his deal was there, but he found himself no longer employed with the FBI. And the director of the Air Marshal Service hired him to take over the Las Vegas field office. So this was a guy that came to our office once, myself and a former Special Forces veteran with extensive civil aviation security experience were running that field office with morale top of the charts, performance top of the charts, fewer sick days, highest pistol qualifications, most productive intelligence reports, on and on and on. He came and took over that field office and just absolutely decimated that place. He destroyed the morale and began hunting all my best agents, trying to ruin their careers because he wanted to keep that job indefinitely and didn't want my hardest chargers to be promoted and threaten his job.
Sure.
And
I
so
see that.
I figured all that out the hard way, and I figured it out, most of it after the fact, as to what his motive was. Because at the time I did not understand what his motive was, but I realized I had to report him in good faith, and the system was corrupt. So the five entities that are available for a national security whistleblower, I reached to one by one, and they each failed me. And at that point, I realized, okay, this is not for me. I'm not going to stay here and be somebody's whipping boy for having done the job in good faith. So then I started contracting. So I contracted for Department of State and another agency that we don't talk about, running high-threat mobile security for their senior officials in the war zones, and taking them to and from their different meetings and planning all of their missions and working with other fellow special operations guys.
So you got to partake in the first Gulf War and the second one in a different capacity.
Yeah, exactly. I spent a lot of time in Iraq, that's for sure. Yeah. Many years.
And I had my 21st, 22nd, and 23rd birthday over there. That was good. Not as much as you, probably, but it was fun. It was good times.
Right on.
So all this time, military, same industry, but then you've branched out into many different industries. I mean, you've done stuff with film and stuff in Hollywood and stuff with nonprofits, stuff in business. I mean, we talked about the course in Stanford that you went to, the connections you've been making all this time through all these years. I'm sure have had to just been phenomenal and help you out along the way too.
Oh yeah. Well, in the intelligence community, I met really, really strong people, station chiefs and so forth that were just very sharp, very capable, good-hearted patriots. And same thing in the diplomatic community. Several people that I met along the way, I'm like, man, this is a really good quality person. We've maintained those personal friendships over the years. And same thing with some of the guys in the Air Marshal service, veterans and great guys that I still, all the guys that work. I had 210 agents to manage for a while, for about 6 months, until they brought this guy in. So a lot of guys that I worked with. So maintain all those friendships as well. And, there are just a lot of good people that I reach to now when I want to solve problems. I still have this network from this diverse journey and wearing all these hats over the years. I've worked in all these different capacities, and so I know some great people, and it's nice to know them and have them on speed dial, so to speak.
Did each journey excite you in a certain way, and you felt passionate about what you were doing at the time?
Yeah. I mean, I really, as a warrior in the SEAL teams, I felt like that was my purpose. I had this burning fire in my gut to go make war on those who were planning to come here and ruin our security. And I did not have any sense of humor about it. And I was dead serious, and I wanted to go just kick the pants out of the bad guys and teach them a lesson. And then now I've found a different passion, but along the way I could see my vision kind of morphing. I'd served well as a warrior. I decorated for heroic service in combat, so it went well for me. And then when I started the International Coalition Against Poaching, ICAP, a few years back, after I came back from Africa, Animal Planet hired me to film a 3-part special called Battleground Rhino Wars over in Africa. And there was a guy that was an African Special Forces veteran that ran a wildlife documentary company. And some of his friends ran a security company that runs security for a lot of the private reserves for the animals over there. So he said, Craig, it'd be really smart if we let you run operations, bring your team over here, run operations against the poachers, help save some of the last of the endangered rhinos, and film it so that the world can gain understanding of the problem, and then we can get better funding to safeguard the last of an endangered species and to help strengthen the enforcement and increase the penalties, because the risk versus reward dynamic is inverted. They can get almost $500,000 per horn, but only a couple weeks in jail if they get caught. So we need to change that. So he wanted to use the power of media to do that. And I thought it was a really smart solution. And
why'd you get into poaching prior to that?
Well, that's why I got into it. I've always loved animals since I was a small boy. And when Peter is his name, a Special Forces vet from South Africa, he called me. He goes, "Hey, I'm in Hollywood, and everybody's telling me I have to have you."
Because you had already started your organization.
No, I hadn't. Okay. I was doing Top Shot on History Channel.
I remember that.
And serving as an expert for firearms and
Interesting.
Just teaching people.
So they want, that's from the beginning. They said, come to Africa, bring your team out here.
Yeah, he says, "Craig, people are telling me you got to be the guy to head up this team."
I get it.
Why? And I said, "Man, I don't know why. I'm just a regular dude. My heart's good, and I love animals. Maybe that." And I said, I served as a DevGru operator. I was a Marine. I've been around. I'm a combat vet. I'm not scared, and I've got a good network. He goes, "Okay, well let's have a look at you, man, because everybody's telling me you got to be the guy." So we put it together. I went over there. I chose a small team for the pilot episodes.
Interesting.
We went over there for 6 weeks, and we ran operations and filmed it.
What was the first entrance into film for you in that just whole industry community?
A friend of mine, God rest his soul, Joey Baker, Navy SEAL, said, "Hey, Craig, I know you want to do tech advising, but you could do some acting too. Here's a guy, a SWIC operator, a boat driver for the SEAL teams, has a production company, and he's making a new zombie film from a different perspective. He's a CIA writer and comedian that's looking at what a zombie is from a scientific perspective and bringing like a different concept of what a zombie is. And we're all, some of us SEALs are going to be in this zombie movie. And would you want to play? And I said, well, sure, let's do it. And so I went out in San Diego, is where we filmed it, and actor D.B. Sweeney came down, Gary Graham, Doug Jones that does all the Hellboy and Silver Surfer, all those crazy Pan's Labyrinth character actors with all the costume and makeup, and it was just fantastic to meet these people and work with them, and all those friendships still remain.
Wow. Picking up a parallel theme in my life, nothing to compare on my side, but the people and just keeping your mind open, you don't know what path your life is going to go down.
So true.
I mean, it seems just you're doing this one day, now I'm in Hollywood, now I'm in Africa, and 5-6 years ago I'm an Air Marshal on a plane.
Yeah, like a rat in a maze.
In the maze.
It's easy in my older age to look back and remain humble, because I realized so much of what I thought I knew and what I thought I was about, I didn't really know. I think I believe now I was being guided through that journey. And each of the points of pain in my life, the challenges were training courses to make me a better person and for me to learn from.
And a lot of that is aged not that you're old, but I'm saying as you get older, you take all that experience.
Yeah, I understand it more now that I've aged. Back then, I just thought I was kicking the pants out of life and accomplishing everything I wanted to do and going for my dreams.
Wow.
But in hindsight now, I can see that I was being trained and prepared for something.
And you were being trained and prepared for something, and I'm not going to remember the exact conversation but we had, but before you came on the show, and we just met briefly, 2 months ago almost. This whole thing's pretty new, and I kind of told you what I was doing, the idea for this show to bring new perspectives and stories and opinions to the veteran community. I'm just a huge believer on you got to just open up your mind, hear new things. That's how you grow, and then you can start asking yourself the right questions on what path you want to go down in life. But we were at your house and sitting in your backyard, and you gave me some tea, and you were saying, I'm in my 50s, and I kind of am just now finding the real passion in my life. And that in and of itself is a powerful story, to be in the 50s, everything you've done, and now this is a new chapter for you, so to speak, and something that you're really passionate about.
Yeah, it was like an epiphany. One friend of mine from the intelligence community in Houston said, Craig, this is the area that we grew up, just north of Houston, is the epicenter. It's the most hotly trafficked area for children illegally. These people are keeping them in dog kennels in some cases. They're torturing and abusing and murdering children. They sell them like property, and it's a new criminal enterprise. And when I started talking to other investigators that were working these cases, they let me know that this is really dark and creepy stuff, and all the stuff that we've dealing with the Mexican drug cartel and the mafia organizations and all the different organized crime. A lot of it's bad, but this is worse. There's a darker, more despicable aspect of what they're doing to the kids than any of these other crimes. The other crimes, it's all about money. This is about something different. And so some of it's sexual, some of it's political blackmail and leverage and manipulation, and some of it's just straight up sadistic in nature of what people want to do to children. If they can buy a child, then they could do whatever they want to them off the books. It's really, really dark and disgusting stuff.
And was this new for you to hear all this when like you said, out there in Houston?
Yeah, it was. I'd always known that there was human trafficking, but I didn't know that child trafficking was that pervasive, or quite frankly, I didn't know much about it, so I didn't know it was that dark and hateful and evil, really. So I got my heart broken at the stories, at some of what the investigators were telling me, and that they were saying, really, once you peel back the layers of the politics, the money, the sex, it's spiritual in nature. This is the front line between good and evil, And your badge and your gun's not going to do you much good if you don't understand what the nature of this conflict.
To put it in perspective, you briefly said it, but this is a business for people. What's the dollar sign? I've read. What's the dollar sign on this?
It is child trafficking is the fastest growing criminal enterprise on earth. And in the continental United States, it is estimated at a $38 to $50 billion a year criminal enterprise. So we've got a problem. And through my research, what seemed to have been the ignition point to cause it to kind of ramp up in the United States was a sadomasochistic pedophile named Alfred Kinsey, who was a scientist, and he wanted his behavior to be condoned. And he very actively politicked in all 50 states to soften our educational system on an adult basically raping a child. And the same thing with our legal system and our psychological health care system. So one man ignited this wildfire of destruction that, 3 or 4 generations later, we've got ourselves an epidemic. And it's been multiplied through the ease of the internet and the apps, with people sharing videos and photos. And it's just gone into a really, really wildfire kind of state, and it's a bad thing. It's all bad. There's no good in it for children whatsoever.
Would you call this a brand new chapter in your life, as opposed to I could do different film stuff? It's in the same industry. You have the knowledge, but is this a brand new something for you? Would you call it?
It's a different way to fight, but it's the same principle of defending the defenseless. That's kind of like my life's ethos. I can't stand a bully, and I don't like to see people deceived and abused who are innocent and helpless. And I think that's what a real warrior does, is he defends the defenseless. And that's what I mean to do. So yes, I'm not going to solve child sex trafficking with rockets and a belt-fed machine gun or a sniper rifle. What I can do is expose it through media and ignite 320 million Americans to the fact that we got a serious problem. Let them know how these predators are stalking and hunting our children, so that we can rise up against it and bring a real set of solutions to safeguard the children. At the end of the day, I just want people to stop raping kids.
Wow. How does law enforcement fight this? The actual tactics on the ground, how do you combat that? Or what's their strategy?
It varies greatly. We've been invited to train law enforcement on our sting operations. So when I saw that the American populace are largely unwitting to the nature of this threat, or even its existence, I realized that my best weapon, the best contribution I can make, is to expose it, be the Paul Revere of child sex trafficking, and sound the alarm and awaken 320 million people so they can safeguard themselves and their children, right? So a documentary is the best vehicle, the best tool that I could identify to bring that level of awareness. So I set about trying to rally the money to film a documentary, and then it turned out that I was going to need to found an organization in order to rally that money to fund the documentary.
Raising money for anything is not easy, let me tell you.
No, it's not. So I did it, and I wanted the bureaucracy and the liability of a nonprofit organization like I wanted a hole in the head. But if I was serious about changing this dynamic of this widespread abuse of the children, I was going to have to be willing to do whatever it took. And so I was willing to found the organization. We started raising money. We started filming Contraland, and we realized that with my federal law enforcement background, I could bring in investigators and operators, and we could run very effective sting operations and give the predators a chance to come a-running for the kids. And boy, they do.
Wow.
And they will.
Is that depicted on the documentary?
It is. Yeah, you'll see some of the sting operations. We've gotten 22 arrests so far with a 100% conviction rate in 3 different states in the United States and 5 countries we've operated in.
Wow.
So far, and it's kind of a big deal. And I want to multiply what we're doing. So I realize that our template of the sting operation is effective, and it feels good to arrest each child predator because pedophilia is it's a serial type of predation. But they don't rape one child and stop. They rape as many as they can. They don't tend to ever change their outlook or their mindset. They're wired the way they're wired. We interview the perpetrators, and they'll confide in you. Yeah, well, I like what I like, but I'll tell the court-appointed counselor whatever they need to hear. And so a lot of them work themselves into positions where they have access to children. They want to be Boy Scout leaders. They want to be Sunday school teachers. They want to be school teachers. They want to be coaches and these kinds of things, so they can have access to the girls and boys unsupervised, and so that they can abuse those positions of trust to do their thing. Well, some of them in that capacity rape hundreds of children throughout their lifetime. Many of them do. But some of them are caught very early on. And so they say the best estimate they can come up with right now is 70 children each that they harm. And so every child predator we arrest and take off the street and put them in a box to rape no more prevents the rape of who knows how many children, right? Potentially hundreds. So it feels good to fight back in that way.
It does.
So
the documentary just goes along with the mission of your organization, the nonprofit that you started, to get the mission out, or to get the word out, I mean?
The documentary shows some of the missions for the specific reason of depicting just how pervasive the predators are. They're not somewhere else. They're not in another country, they're not in another city, not in another state. We go to some places that are quite rural, and we'll put out local ads, and boy, they just come flooding. It's disturbing. Our first ad was in Connecticut. We put out an ad. The first call was in 15 minutes.
And when you say ad, I'm tracking, but I'm not.
This particular ad was a back page ad. So we'll put them out on different apps and different social media platforms, and letting the child predators know that we have what they're after, and they pursue it. And so first response was 15 minutes. And over the first 30 days, 5,000 local responses to that ad for sex with a small girl in that case. So we show it in Contraland so people can see, oh my God, this is worse than we understood. However bad the problem is, we need to depict it accurately. We need to show the people so that they can take the proper corrective measures. And so we show it because of that, to educate the people. And I question the perps. Once the investigator has finished her discussion with them, before we reveal to them what's going on, I'll come in the room and there's a different dynamic because I'm not a pretty man. And so they look at me like, uh-oh. And some of them thought I was there to rape them. Oof. Or they thought I was Chris Hansen. Or the police, right? And so I would just question them like, hey, do you have children? And someone would be like, yeah, I've got children. And I would ask them, well, then would you want this done to your child? Would you want us to start selling your child like this and have people come and do this to them? They're like, oh, heck no. Like, hey, then what did you think your actions, what impact did you think this was going to have on this 12 or 13-year-old girl? Did you even give any consideration about her? And none of them have given me a straight answer. Of course, all of them say, oh, this is my first time. They all have the same exact excuse, but it's not any of them's first time. They do it all the time.
On what level do you think America knows this is happening?
1 or 2%.
That low.
I think most people, if we walked out the door right now and started knocking on doors and saying, hey, how bad do you think child sex trafficking is? They'd be like, oh yeah, Southeast Asia, they got a problem over there, don't they? I'm like, no, here.
Wow.
They would look at you like you're crazy because they're not informed.
Wow.
And that's dangerous.
I want to get back to the documentary, but tell me what goes into the money, the funding, the crew, the team. This is all the states you went, and that can't be easy just to get it off the ground to begin with.
Yeah. Well, if you hire the right crew, you can set about and do a clean run at it. What I interviewed some of the producers around the country that were the most successful at doing what I would refer to as a high threat documentary, exposing a major crime syndicate or international crime that would be protected with violence. And they all had good suggestions and solutions, but one guy that seemed like he had some pretty good solutions was actually a friend of mine that I'd been co-writing movie scripts with in Tucson. And I'm not going to mention his name, so I'm not trying to beat down on him. But long story short, I hired him to be the producer because I thought, as my friend, he would give it a good faith, 100% heart and soul effort. And he was very talented artistically and graphically. And he's an expert at story and storytelling, and I thought he would crush it. And then he hired a manager who ended up being a con man from a crime family that had been bankrupting companies across Tucson for years under assumed names, under different names.
Wow.
And so the producer hired that guy to manage the production for him, and I didn't really have any say-so at that point. But then the manager began trying to wrap his tentacles around our organization and take over more and more of our admin stuff and our merchandise and things like that. So it came to a point where we had to detach that guy and pull his tentacles out of everything that we did and clean house. And that set us back a year.
It's a big deal.
Dave, we took a year loss of everything that we had been fighting to bring to the American public just to sue him to get our own footage back out of his office that we had already paid for. In fact, based on what we know now, we had overpaid. And so he was like, come get it, sue me. And so we had to go through all that expense and aggravation and process. And I'm like, man, my name's out there. People are thinking I'm on the beach in Mexico with an umbrella drinking that we haven't even filmed anything, Yeah. So they're like, prove it out there. Some of the haters on the internet. I'm like, we've got to get this thing out there. And so long story short, we got it. We recovered legally. I brought it to some real pros in LA. And
so it's that same footage that's going to be this doc. You didn't have to reshoot anything?
Well, no, we had to reshoot quite a bit because what I was submitted was basically 3 interviews and footage of 2 sting operations. And what we had lived was 2.5 years of story in 5 countries. It was rich and fantastic.
Wow.
And just none of it was in the skeleton. It was basically a high school level production that was submitted to me. It was just bad. So we spent the last however many months doing an emergency around the clock recovery and rebuilding and finding the footage in this scattered deck of 100 terabytes of footage, finding the pieces that are still viable, that were shot properly, that we could find the audio to, and replacing and putting those in and figure out how it fits together. We've got experts from around the country that are the foremost authorities on child sex trafficking, and we've got guys from undercover inside the FBI, inside the CIA, so very, very high level experts that are many of them on our board of advisors. Just strong people that bring the information and break it down for the viewer. So all of that's in there now. We do show multiple sting operations. We show international operations in Southeast Asia, where I'm going with another nonprofit organizations doing what we refer to as soft rescues, going into the bars and brothels and identifying the underage boys and girls that don't want to be there and working a pipeline to get them out of that. So that was really cool. And then training some of those NGOs and training some of the surviving victims on personal security and that kind of thing. So 2
more unrelated topics, but a last question on this. would you say out of all the chapters in your life, there's a different passion behind this? And if so, I mean, you're a father now.
Yeah.
There's a different passion behind this. If so, does that passion drive you in a different manner?
Well, I look back when I first started learning about this. The thought came to me like, Craig, what would your father do? My dad was a pastor of a church, a very strong spiritual believer. He was sincere, man. He lived it 24/7. And I watched him change the lives of countless thousands of people. And
wow.
And I knew that he would not stand for this child sex trafficking thing and turn a blind eye to it. That's not the kind of man that he was. And my father's passed on now, but I'm still here. So I thought, I'm a warrior. I have to fight this back, but fight it back in a different way than I'm trained to. I have to fight this in the way that my father may have, more in the way that he might have fought back. Spiritually, culturally, denounce this, expose it. Sunlight's the best antiseptic for corruption, right? Rip the lid off, shine the sunlight on it, and let's fry this thing, right? Let's burn it out and destroy this criminal enterprise so the children can have just a fair start to life. Look, life's challenging and stressful and hostile enough in our adulthood without an abusive, traumatic childhood. And that's for the children that survive it. A lot of them don't survive it. And if they do, they're strung out on drugs and their lives are wasted. Their brains are wasted. They can't reproduce. They commit suicide. So I just want them to have a fair start, man. Let's just get them to adulthood and let them choose their path. Let's just give them a sanctuary of a childhood. That's how it's supposed to be, man.
Wow.
So that's kind of my approach. And no sooner than I had committed to founding this organization and began the process and started putting the pieces together, then our own daughter was abducted in Tucson. And I found out about it because my wife woke me up in the middle of the night crying, and I could hear my daughter screaming through the phone to my wife. She was hysterical. And so I wanted to first understand where she was, because I was going to meet her. I was going to intersect wherever she was, and she was across town, but she was blazing a trail home. And so at that point, I wanted to know what cross streets she was crossing so that I could call the sheriff's department and have them intervene, because they could get to her sooner than I could from wherever their patrols may have been. And anyway, she wasn't stopping for anything. And so she got home. Sheriff's department were already at our house. We decided that she decided she was going to fight back and go through whatever it took to get this SOB off the streets, because he had kept a knife to her the whole time, telling her he was going to split her open and that he was going to kill her, and that he'd killed all the others before her, and didn't know why he hadn't killed her yet. So he traumatized her. He raped her again and again. That night, but she decided, even in that moment, driving her to the hospital, that he had to go down and that she would do anything that it took to bring that about. So couldn't have been more proud of her at that time. So we got to the hospital. We began the process of fighting back and rebuilding. And I don't want to reveal too much of what's in Contraland, but she served as a junior decoy agent on one of our operations in Utah.
Wow.
And we got 9 arrests on that operation. And
wow.
She was played a key part in that. So I'm proud of her. She's a scrappy little one.
Yeah, sounds like it. I can't even imagine. I just can't.
Yeah.
You said something at your house, and it goes into this, because you started this initiative, and then it was later that what happened to your daughter happened. This transpired. I thought, initially I was under the impression your daughter was raped, and then you got into this. But you meant there was a term you called it. I'm going to forget it. I think you'll be able to pick up on it. You set your life's course on something, and then your daughter got raped. It's not a confirmation you're on the right track, but you called it something. Like it was a.
I call it a cup check.
Yeah, cup check.
Yeah, the martial arts, man. If someone's going to kick you between the groin and the groin, make sure you got your cup on, and if you don't, you'll learn, right?
And it was like the other
it
gentleman
was-
that you mentioned, then something happened to his daughter that he wanted to get involved or something.
Yeah, out of respect, that had just happened to them. I won't bring him up, but it was like evil kind of lashing back, that I had thrown my hat into the ring and committed to this fight and exposing this crime spree and bringing it to an end.
Wow.
And I feel like spiritually, really, our daughter, our family, our mission, if you will, was attacked because of that. And if anything, it only strengthened my resolve. And so that was I think that was in April, and then May. Anyway, the next month, we officially got all the paperwork completed and founded Veterans for Child Rescue. So I feel like that was the first victory of turning right back around within a month and going, okay, now our organization is officially established. Now it's on. So watch what happens now.
Wow.
Stand by.
Wow, that's amazing. So wrapping up this chapter in your life, when's the documentary coming out? How can we see it? Where all that stuff?
Yeah, well, I got to spend 2 weeks in LA recently working on it, and they're finishing it right now. So once they complete the color correction and graphics last final passover, we're going to start the distribution talks. So hopefully that'll be hopefully that should be next week. So we'll see how that timing goes. I know the virus things kind of got some of the travel and industries shut down right now, but as soon as possible, we're going to start distribution meetings, and then we'll figure out what channel wants it, where it's going to air. And then as soon as they can commit to their timing, we'll know the date, and we'll be able to start advertising what the air date will be.
That's awesome. Two more topics real quick. One, veterans getting out. I talk to them. I mentor a lot of veterans here in Phoenix. A lot of them don't know it's not that they're lost per se. They just don't know what maybe their next step is in life or their passion. I always tell them, well, especially the young ones, the 23 to 25, 26, whatever have you, like I was when I got out. I say, it's okay you don't know what you want to do, but don't be complacent. Don't stop. Don't do nothing. Just keep going forward. You got the GI Bill. Go to college. What a great benefit. You have the opportunity to learn different industries and just explore. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the military is good at conditioning us to serve the role or the job that it needs out of us. Some of us choose the job that we want in the military, and we serve in the capacity that it suits us personally. Some get in a pipeline that ends up in a job that's not ultimately their best contribution, or it doesn't suit their personality. I would say in the transition, take a fresh view, scan the horizon 360, and see what all is out there, what motivates you. Or are you an artistic or musical person? Are you like racing or these kinds of things, or recreational sports or professional sports, or is it some sort of contribution to help people, or in this degree or that, or first responder things, or creative? Do you want to create your own products or services? Just really put in some time to kind of explore all the directions and see what's out there, so that the next phase of your life you spend following your passion and doing what suits you, and find your best contribution, find your mark, because every one of us is the best in the world at something. Even if it's a tiny thing, we're what can I do better than anyone else on earth?
You got to find it.
You have to find it, and why would I not do that as a profession? And then, of course, get the education along the way on business and how to monetize that thing and take care of yourself. So get smart on that.
Revenue is important. And
realize that the civilian population is not like the military. The culture is radically different. It's much more cutthroat. The civilian industry believe that if they can leave you destitute and take all your stuff in a business deal, that they are, quote unquote, more sophisticated than you. That's how the big financial wheelers and dealers, they feel. They don't believe that they've done a good job on their end unless you're harmed from it. They want to do the deal so harshly that you're harmed from it, and then they feel good. That's how a lot of them think, and that was a painful revelation for me to see that so many of them thought that way. I learned a lot through the Stanford graduate school of business at Stanford University. I got to go through an Ignite course there. It was a fantastic eye-opener. But to listen to a lot of the big tycoons talk about the sophistication, whereas we would say in the military, we would just call it rip-off or dishonorable, or, they call it more sophisticated. So you just have to realize the language and the culture difference.
Business is cutthroat. I mean,
it's cutthroat. Don't expect them to be your battle buddy, because they're not. And once you get it, understand the playing field that you're on, then approach it with the right safeguards and precautions, and do the vetting of the people that you're going to interact with. And then you can be okay. You can make your mark. You can do well. And you can treat each other with dignity and respect, but just realize they're not your friend. And they are out to do you harm so that they can benefit from it. And if you just realize that, then they won't be able to do that level of damage to you, and you can succeed.
Wrap us up and tell us what you're doing with Sawman Says. I saw the first episode on that. That was pretty cool.
Man, some of my friends said, Craig, you should have your own talk show. Because they're like, are you on this guy's show? Have you been on this guy's show or that guy's show yet? I said, nope. Hadn't invited me. I know that his friends are saying, hey, are you going to have Sawman on? Well, yeah, I just got to get around to it. And I'm like, they're not getting around to it. And they're like, Sawman, you should have your own. With your culture, we want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
We want to hear what Sawman says. And I'm like, okay, what should we call it? And they're like, you should call it Sawman Says. And so it's not about me, the show. The show is about just bringing different public figures that I know, and a lot of people that I know, and letting them share their journey and their lessons learned. It's primarily a lessons learned type talk show.
I like it.
Behind, like, so many of the public figures, people may know them standing on a podium with a big trophy or that big win for whatever they're known for. But I want to know what makes them tick as a person behind the scenes. And so that's how I approach it. And we've filmed the first 15 so far. And
That's
the first
awesome.
2 are up on the net. And sawmansays.com is growing. So it's a fun side project, and I appreciate being able to do it and meeting good people.
Well, Craig Sawman Sawyer at the David Johnson Show, The Chapters in Life, Designing Your Life, and Keep Going Forward. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thanks, Dave. It's been a pleasure, and we appreciate you helping me give a platform for Veterans for Child Rescue. And
it's my pleasure.
Hope that people will help us with it, because the children belong to all of us, right? This is our culture.
It's a big deal.
Our society, and I think it's incumbent upon each of us to do what we can for the little ones.
Thanks for stepping up and being a warrior.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.